the Nintendo Switch 2. If we thought the PS5 had a rough time by coming out during a worldwide pandemic, then the Switch 2 is making that look like a success story by comparison. Underneath all the excitement for the awesome games coming our way, the cool features the new console had to offer, and the short wait that we have to get our hands on it, there was something sinister lurking. All our troubles can be boiled down to words that start with T. Tariffs, tech, Trump, you name it, it's a problem. But that doesn't mean Nintendo is without any fault here either. While we should acknowledge that they've taken quite a few steps to mitigate the issues those T words were poised to pose, we can also acknowledge that Ninty themselves has chosen to be rather sneaky with a few details. And today, I'm not here talking about hidden costs and fees. There's been enough discourse around that. But rather a hidden limitation that one big, major feature has that they didn't openly say out loud. Instead, they chose to keep this restriction locked to the fine print for all of us to find on our own, or for the majority of people to not find at all and later have to put up with. And that limitation is that Switch 1 games, if upgraded to their Switch 2 counterparts, will lose the ability to have backup saves in the cloud. That's right, all those hours you poured into your save for Tears of the Kingdom or Breath of the Wild, the effort and attention to detail you painstakingly crammed into those playthroughs will all be at risk of permanent loss if something happens to your newfangled Switch 2, if you so choose to upgrade your Switch 1 version to the Switch 2 editions. It's weird, but it's definitely something we can safely say Nintendo wouldn't let happen unless they had a good reason, right? Either way, it's something to consider nonetheless if you're thinking about upgrading. Now, I do have some good news regarding this situation. Everyone I've seen talking about it definitely seems to be treating this as some sort of hopeless thing, but it actually isn't, and I want to tell you why, but before I disclose why, I think it's important to clear up some misconceptions about why this restriction exists in the first place, and that'll help you understand the good news later. To be clear, this loss of function only happens when upgrading your Switch 1 version to a Switch 2 edition. If you buy a Switch 2 edition of your games outright, then they'll still be able to retain cloud save capabilities. Conversely, if you play your Switch 1 game on a Switch 2, then it'll still have access to the cloud saves as well. This can only mean one thing. Something happens with the games when you upgrade from the Switch 1 to the Switch 2 version. Yeah, obviously, the game changes that it'll have all the new features, updated graphics and performance, etc., but I'm talking beyond that. Something behind the hood. There's a shift that seems to happen where the cloud can no longer keep track of what existed with your game before the change and what will exist after at the same time. An incompatibility with how the cloud saves function and how the upgrades function, at least in their current forms. Now that we understand that, we can understand why the situation isn't as hopeless as many a YouTuber is making it out to be. Now, since the issue is something as simple as an incompatibility with the mingling of two different software, then that means a fix can be implemented down the road. Matter of fact, we've actually seen this happen before with the Switch 1. For starters, the Switch 1 didn't always have cloud saves in the first place. It was a feature introduced later in the system's lifespan. This shows us that there's an avenue for Nintendo to update their cloud functionality to become compatible with Switch 1 to 2 upgrades down the line. It's a simple matter of tweaking the software, or creating a completely new software that replaces the one that we have right now. Now, with the introduction of cloud saves for the Switch 1, of course, there came a list of certain games that were said to be incompatible with it even at the time. For most of those games that weren't included, they were discluded specifically to avoid cheating. They were pretty much all exclusively multiplayer games. One, however, was Animal Crossing, and after about a year or two of Animal Crossing New Horizons being out, the developers crafted their own cloud save function that bypassed the manners of cheating players would have otherwise been able to abuse. This means that on top of the avenue Nintendo can take to simply tweak their cloud save software, they can also introduce a completely separate program for saving data for upgraded software if they so choose. No matter which way you cut it though, I can almost guarantee you that Nintendo is working on a solution as we speak. I wouldn't be too worried if you are looking to update your Switch 1 games to a Switch 2 edition. You know, your games like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, or even soon to be Metroid Prime 4 or Pokemon Legends EA. However, if you are worried about that, or if you know that you don't take very good care of your stuff, then I definitely recommend holding off on upgrading your game version. Or if it's a game you've yet to buy outright anyways, but know or think that you might want a Switch 2 version eventually, then I'd say get the Switch 2 edition from the start just to be safe. Of course, that brings us back to the topic of money. But again, we're not here to talk about that today. So let us know down in the comments how you're going to handle your purchases of the Switch 2 games that also exist on Switch 1. Does this news scare you away from simply upgrading Switch 1 versions versus buying Switch 2 editions outright, or even from getting the Switch 2 editions at all? We can all talk about it together down below. Afterwards, check out more of my videos like this one here where I discuss the game that most deserves a Switch 2 edition. Links right in front of you and in the pinned comment. If you'd like to support me and have your name featured at the end of all of my videos, then please join my Patreon with the link in front of you or in the description. I've been johtojonny, and I'll catch you all there.